Matt,
All right.
it's up to you.
Yeah, moving on. We've got En Vogue for the first time with Funky Divas. In the opening montage, you heard a clip from My Lovin', Never Gonna Get It. And now you're going to hear a clip from Divas by En Vogue. This comes in at number 2,257 in the 1990s on Best Ever Albums, number 226 in 1992, number 13,379 of all time. It is En Vogue's highest rated album on Best Ever Albums. It did not make Rolling Stone's list, and En Vogue comes in at a whopping 5,361 of overall artist rankings on Best Ever Albums. So, yeah, like I said, this is the first time we are covering this group. It's their second album out of a total of 7. Their most recent album is 2018's Electric Cafe. And the genres that are included with them include R&B, soul, funk, New Jack Swing, pop, hip-hop, and dance, and influenced by such artists as Janet Jackson, the Pointer Sisters, Aretha Franklin, Dionne Warwick, Chaka Khan, and Tony. Other artists that they are similar to include TLC, Exposé, Mariah Carey, Belle Biv DeVoe, SWV, Jodeci, and Toni Braxton. And artists that they have influenced include Destiny's Child, Ashanti, Brandy, Aaliyah, Monica, and the Spice Girls. Their highest charting single is actually a three-way tie between the song that you guys covered, 1990's Hold On, as well as 1992's My Lovin', You're Never Gonna Get It, and 96's Don't Let Go Love. Those all hit number 2 in the U.S., and their highest charting album is a tie between Funky Divas and the follow-up to that, which is EV3. Both of those reached number 8 in the U.S., but Funky Divas does remain their best-selling album, selling over 5 million copies worldwide in total. So a little history of the ladies. They were formed in Oakland, California in 1989 by, this was actually kind of like they were on a mission, a production and songwriting duo of Denzel Foster and Thomas McElroy. They basically just wanted to create an all-female group, kind of in the tradition of the groups that were, very successful back in the 50s and 60s. And they wanted women that had strong vocals, who basically all the members could take lead if need be. They didn't like we talked about Boyz II Men. They didn't want to have like somebody that was out in front. They wanted them all to kind of be equal partners. Also, bonus points for attractive and intelligent women. That was something that they wanted as well, to help them market. And for the auditions, they said approximately 3,000 women showed up for the audition, which I can't imagine that they auditioned 3,000. The amount of time that must have taken just seems ridiculous. But they did hold auditions in 1988, and they finally decided upon 4 women. They include Dawn Robinson, Cindy Herron, Maxine Jones, and Terry Ellis. So those are the 4 main members of En Vogue that are on this record. Initially, they called themselves For You and then Vogue. But they finally settled on En Vogue when they realized, another one of those times where they realized that they had a name that somebody else already had taken. So Vogue was the name of a group already. So they just said En Vogue. So there you go. So Cindy Herron actually appeared in several television shows in the late 80s. So she had some acting credits, including The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and Full House. And the song Hold On was awarded a Billboard Music Award for the #1 R&B single of that year. And I found that this was kind of a funny story. They signed an endorsement deal with Converse, and they also were featured as an opening act on Luther Vandross's 1993 Never Let Me Go tour. And this was mainly a tour of various countries in Europe. And they did not get along with Luther Vandross. And by his own admission, I guess he gave an interview in Vibe where he's basically talking about he and the entourage behind him. They just clashed with members of En Vogue, and he vowed never to work with them again. I did not see any specifics as to what was the issue behind that, but for whatever reason, En Vogue did not get along with Luther Vandross. So there you go. They did make several television appearances as a group on In Living Color, A Different World, Rock, and Hanging with Mr. Cooper. Definitely some 90s flashbacks there. And on Rock and Hanging with Mr. Cooper, they also sang the show's theme songs. So they were on those shows as well. And then we've got a couple of some turnover with some members. In March of 97, Dawn Robinson left the group after having a contractual issue. She couldn't really, they were kind of a stalemate with the contract negotiations, and she just decided to take off. The group then proceeded as a trio, and they re-recorded Robinson's vocal parts for that third album, EV3. And in 2001, Maxine Jones left the group to be with her daughter, and she was replaced by singer-songwriter by the name of Amanda Cole. But she didn't last too long. She left in 2004, and then she was replaced by Rona Bennett. So basically, over the next couple of years, Terry Ellis and Cindy Herron remained. They're basically the only continuous members of the group. But throughout the ensuing years, there'd be a combination of Jones, Robinson, and Bennett. They all kind of came and went over the years. So there were some reunions, including in 2008, where the original lineup of En Vogue appeared on the BET Awards, performing a medley with Alicia Keys, SWV, and TLC as a tribute to the girl groups of the 90s. They also made a cameo appearance in the romantic comedy sequel Coming to America 2. Or Coming to America, the number 2, right? Yeah. So they were in that with Salt and Peppa. Free Your Mind, the song in this album, was inspired by Funkadelic's Free Your Mind and Your Ass Will Follow. I don't know that song, but they got inspiration from Funkadelic.
That's a classic. Yeah. That's a great song, yeah.
And the opening line to that song where he goes, "Prejudice, write a song about it, like to hear it, here it go," is from a line originally used by David Alan Grier's character in Living Color, in the sketch comedy In Living Color. They cover the Beatles Yesterday on this album, and I was trying to find the number because I know that song's been covered a ton of times, and the only number that I came up with was it's been at least covered 2,200 times, but that was also a figure from 15 years ago, so it's probably way more than that. And the songs on this, Hooked on Your Love and Giving Him Something He Can Feel, were both actually covers, both written by Curtis Mayfield, and they were originally found on the soundtrack to a film which is 1976's Sparkle. And so I don't know if you ever heard of that movie, John or Josh, but that's where those songs were originally.
I think that Diana Ross is in that movie, if I recall.
I don't know. You know who's in that movie is the guy who played opposite Don Johnson in Miami Vice, Tubbs. I think that guy.
Mike, what's his name? White something. Michael White?
Mike White? I don't think that's right. Barry White? I don't know. Anyway, those songs are from that film. So there you go. I think this is the only
Michael Thomas.
There you go. There's a mic in there somewhere. Yeah. Good job, Josh. So there's Funky Divas, and I think we're going to go with John on this one. John, what are your thoughts of this record?
I've always found En Vogue to be such a pleasant group. They have so many songs I love, and we did Hold On already. Their big hit from the first one. This one has a lot of songs. I don't just remember the songs, I remember the videos, and they're also very different. I always, as a kid, and now just that Giving Him Something He Can Feel video is such a great video, where they're just in the red dresses on the stage and singing to the crowd, and very classy but sexy at the same time, and the song sounds tremendous. It's a great song. It's like a throwback song to 60s and 70s sound. Like you said, it's Curtis Mayfield sound, but it's just such a pleasant song. Then you've got them trotting the same ground that I think Janet Jackson did in Black Cat, right? This one on Free Your Mind, which might even be a better version of that song. Another really beautiful video. It's like a fashion shoot kind of with, I remember that monkey statue is I always remember from that video. And Your Love, I'm Never Gonna Get It is another sort of throwback to 60s girl groups. And I kind of always viewed En Vogue as the 90s version of the Supremes a little bit, just without anybody being the Diana Ross, because I do remember reading that they purposely made it so that they all were equitable, that there was no lead singer. And when you watch their videos, they all take a part, and in that sense, they're sort of almost like a hip hop group, right? Where each person takes their piece, right? Whether it be the Beastie Boys or the Wu-Tang Clan, or a collective, right? They have a little bit of that feel to them too. And like this album, definitely, especially the videos and stuff you watch, there's a desire to sort of be as inclusive as possible to people listening, so they don't get sort of niched as just an R&B act. And I think they were very successful with that. And obviously, after this album, they do, What a Man, which is, they sing the hooks on that, which is a huge song. They Don't Let Go Love comes later, and that's a massive hit too. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that song, but it's one of the better R&B songs of the late 90s. And yeah, nothing is being reinvented here, because it's a continuation of the girl group standard. And I wouldn't say that any of the vocalists are powerhouses necessarily, but when you put them, it's the collective is bigger than the individual, and you put them all together, and the layered vocals, the choices in terms of how they sing, they sound similar enough that they can harmonize, but also different enough that there's pieces that layer together. So sometimes they sound clearly like four voices, and other times they sound like they're all sort of singing the same part, just slightly off, which I also like about it. And it's just, it hits all of the happy parts for me. It's pleasant songs, it's positive, it's catchy, it's a variety. I don't the only argument I have is I don't necessarily love the sketches in this a little bit. I get why they picked them. It almost gives you a little bit of a feel of the band a little bit. It kind of leads into the women's empowerment-y. Like, they're not hitting you over the head with it, but definitely we're, sort of like, we're strong women, not to be, not, to intimidate you, but also not to be trifled with, kind of, which that's a great lane, right? For women in a group.
Yep.
And in that sense, it's kind of like what TLC was sort of doing at the same time, albeit in a different format. So I've got more I'll share later, but yeah, this is a really good album. I think it's a little long at 52 minutes, but I'm starting to learn that every album, for the most part, is there's an exception this week, which I appreciate that I'll go into, but I just think, like, with the long play here, I can't hold it against them, because I just, a takeaway almost every week is, even the albums I love, I'm like, this album could be 10 minutes. And I'm starting to think that 42 minutes is like
the magic number.
Is the magic number. That or under, and I think, like, the best albums sort of are between 35 and 42 minutes, I'm finding, and especially once you get over 50, you don't always necessarily need all that much. So that's my only quibble here, but it's my quibble with lots of albums of this. So yeah, I'd give this a thumbs up. I enjoyed this one.
Yeah, well, the CDs are around now, so it's like, oh, we could fit up to 80 minutes worth of music. Let's do it. So yeah,
right, get your money's worth.
But it's quality. I don't ever feel like I was being cheated by having 8 good songs as opposed to 13, because you're still only getting at most 8 good songs.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I like, I always think of them as the precursor to Destiny's Child. You said the Supremes before them, but this is kind of like the decade before Destiny, or same decade as Destiny's Child, but later on. Anyway, I really like this album also. I really like the harmonizing. It's a rare thing nowadays that people can actually sing that are on their albums, and they're not like produced to sound like they're actually singing. And I think their voices and their talent comes through on this album, and there's a clarity to their singing. And maybe there's production tricks at this point in time, but I feel like you can't find 4 people in a group nowadays that can sing like they can. So that is just kind of enough for me in a lot of ways at this point in time. It's refreshing in some ways. I like their harmonizing. I like that their personality, whether it be real or not, like, comes through on this. I don't mind the skits, because they're not really separate from the music. They're just kind of like intros to some of the songs, and they're not really that many of them. It kind of sets up the song in some ways, from what I remember. But yeah, it just, there's a variety of styles on here. You kind of have a classic pop sound, but then they incorporate some rap. They have rock guitar on Free Your Mind. That's very, you said it perfectly. The Black Cat thing with Janet Jackson, that's like really the closest analogy.
Did you watch the videos, Josh? Because all the videos are very memorable, in my opinion. Like, growing up, I remember watching all of them.
Yeah, that's the one thing I didn't do, unfortunately,
Okay.
this week for this one. I should have, though. You're right. You mentioned that
I
last
think
week.
you'll enjoy all three of the big hits.
Yeah.
They all are really good videos in their own way.
But I like they have the New Jack Swing sound, too. I think Matt said that in the genres, and the, they kind of have, thematically they cover all kind of the classic tropes, like a breakup song, or like You're Too Good for This Man song. You've got love songs, there's a touch of sex through that runs throughout in some of the songs, or like innuendo, and it's just kind of a fun, bubbly album. You're right, it did go a little long. I feel like some of the songs they just like keep, they got to add another, breakdown of them singing on repeat for like the last minute or whatever of some of the songs. But it really covers the gamut in terms of, just fun, bubbly, feel good pop. And I'm right there with you, John. It was just a pleasurable listen, and something that I didn't have to think too hard about, but was interesting and like kind of different from today's pop sound that was kind of a welcome relief, or welcome listen. So thumbs up for me on this one.
Yeah, I think I knew the singles. I thought I might have known more of the album, because I'm pretty sure my sister had this on cassette. But I don't really, aside from the singles, I didn't really recognize any of this. But yeah, I'm with you guys. I enjoyed this as well. I think, I think that there's the variety in here is pretty good. Well, first and foremost, I think it's the vocals, really, right? I think that the harmonies, there's some really great harmonies in here that they're doing, and so it's clear when you read the bio that like, oh, we want, this is what we're going for, and then you hear it in the album and it totally makes sense. It's like, yeah, the success they did a great job of finding four women that kind of never really, that sounded great together, whether it was in harmony or in sync together, and nobody really stood out. They could all kind of take the lead. So I did like the variety on here. I thought a song like Desire was really interesting. It's kind of its own, it's its own thing. It's almost got like a reggae kind of thing happening, like a little bit of a psychedelic trippy vibe. That's kind of, that was different,
There's horns in that too, I think.
Yeah, and just, different than the traditional kind of like R&B genre. But yeah, then you throw in the guitar on something like Free Your Mind, and you've got some really pretty ballads, like Giving Him Something He Can Feel is a great version, great cover of that Aretha Franklin song that Curtis Mayfield wrote. Actually the sketch, I kind of was laughing at the one, I think it's before Give It Up, Turn It Loose, where like the one girl goes out of harmony, like, oh, what's wrong? What's going on? It's like, is it Kevin? It's Kevin. Oh my God, it's Kevin. And it made me laugh, because she's like, no, it's not Kevin. So I don't know. It's short-lived. It made me chuckle, and then it leads kind of right into the song. Yep. So I didn't mind that at all. But yeah, I could probably agree it's a little bit long. You could probably chop a couple songs off this, maybe head a little bit more in the 40-minute realm would have been better. But yeah, and then it was a similar reaction, because we were talking about Motown Philly earlier, and I was talking about, there was a part there that I never really heard before, that I picked up on this time around, and that happened to me with My Love and You're Never Gonna Get It, because there's like a part in there right when they're leading into the chorus, they do this really cool thing where they're like bum 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 bum, right? It's just the way that they lead right into that, and I never picked up on that before. It's kind of like a subtle thing in the background, and I was like, oh, that was great. That was a cool little melodic element that they threw in there that kind of elevated that part, and and made me appreciate that song more.
That wasn't them singing, that was the music in the background?
No, it was them singing it. They were doing bum bum. They were making that noise. It was kind of like the onomatopoeia, but it was really cool, right? And it was like a really cool production trick that they did there that I never heard before, right? So I enjoyed this. I thought this was a pretty solid effort. If they were kind of saying, oh, this is like similar artists are like TLC, and I remember John and I covered that, I think, when you were on hiatus there, Josh, and I think one of the things that we had talked about was, it's a little uneven, right? You could tell it's like that was like a little bit more of a debut song, that the singles really stood out, but then there were songs in the background not so much. And I was thinking about that album because, similar time, like all girl group kind of a thing. And this was a more of a mature album than that. This was certainly more of a of a the deeper cuts, I think, were more interesting, that were better. And Denzel Foster and Thomas McElroy, who founded the group and put them together, they basically wrote, all the songs except the 3 covers. And I think that I never heard of them before. I didn't really look into their background specifically, see what else they did, but I thought that they did a really good job of the songwriting here, and put together an album as a whole that it totally makes sense why it was huge, right? The 4 women, they were charismatic, they were attractive, they were great vocalists, great songs, and falling right in line with kind of like 90s R&B. There's a little bit of hip hop on here too. There's some rapping that's going on, so they're kind of delving in a lot of different areas, and it was an interesting listen, right? Albeit a little bit long, but still interesting enough for a thumbs up. And I definitely enjoyed it.
Nice. Okay. Any final thoughts?
I don't think so. Just I just always keep going back to I'm glad in the 90s there's the stuff to cover, the alternative rock, the hip hop that's obvious, the electronic music, but I'm glad we're hitting country a little bit more, and I'm glad we're hitting R&B a little bit more, because to me they are huge pieces of the 90s equation, and just it reminds me, not in a sad way or a nostalgic way, but just there just isn't a lot of stuff like this on the radio anymore, and I just don't get it, because it was such a staple from like the 50s to like the mid 2000s, and I find it almost incomprehensible that this type of music couldn't be popular
successful
again. Yeah, I don't know if we've just seeded that lane to, like, it still exists, but it's a nostalgia lane now, so just people just don't do it anymore and just rely on what was made. But it's baffling to me, because this is like effortlessly enjoyable music, and I mean it just was 4 talented, like, sexy women, and it just seems like it's such a clearly easy package for anybody who wants to kind of try it again. And that's not to minimize what they did, because it's hard to find 4 women that can sing like this and have all the package, but
and presumably get along with each other.
Yeah, I didn't really. There wasn't a whole lot of animosity or anything like that. It was just like that, the one contractual thing. But then she ended up coming back for a period of time. So, but I would also say that this is, I don't know. This is probably better than 2057 of the decade.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. And it's and also, like, Josh, I'll be interested. Check out those 3 videos. I think you'll appreciate them as pieces of filmmaking too, because they're all very interesting choices. And like I said, I think the Free Your Mind video is one of the better videos of the 90s. It's very memorable, and I always remember giving him something he can feel, because it's kind of a funny video. It's basically them in red dresses performing, and a bunch of men, like, kind of like, crossing their legs and like looking like, taking it back, taking deep sips of water, taking off their wedding rings and stuff. It's kind of like it's pretty funny. It's a good video. Yeah. So